Welcome to the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast, where you learn the best doubles lessons to improve your game and win more matches while getting to know some of the top doubles players and coaches on the planet. I'm your host, Will Bochek. This podcast, my weekly strategy newsletter, and my website all focus on the goal of better understanding the sport of doubles and helping players like you improve faster through actionable advice that you can use in your very next match. My goal is to provide the best doubles resources in the world. And to do that, I study, analyze, and work with players at every level of the game, all the way up to the ATP and WTA tours. If you enjoy this podcast, consider becoming a Tennis Tribe member to go even deeper and take your doubles IQ to the next level. Members get access to premium podcast episodes, weekly video lessons, monthly strategy webinars, courses, ebooks, gear discounts, and a lot more. Go to thetennistribe.com/memberships to see all the benefits and sign up. Here's today's episode. You're about to hear a conversation with Coach Calvin Betton. Calvin is the coach of world number one doubles player Harri Patten, who just won Wimbledon alongside Harri Heliovaara. Calvin also coaches Luke Johnson, who plays with Jan Zielinski. I had them on the podcast earlier this year at Indian Wells, and obviously I wanted to have Calvin back on the show to discuss this year's Wimbledon run. Henry and Harri also won the Wimbledon title back in 2024, so we started out comparing the 2026 and 2024 Wimbledon runs. I asked him about tiebreakers. Henry and Harri went 8-1 in tiebreakers this year at Wimbledon. What is it that they did so well? In the final, they faced Arevalo and Pavic, who they had lost to a few weeks earlier in the Queen's final, so we discussed that a bit. He talked about the Wimbledon dinner on Sunday night after the men's singles and women's doubles final. You're going to get some interesting insights into what that Wimbledon champions dinner is like. And then we dove into strategy a bit. I asked him about the returner's partner position and what is his philosophy on playing two back versus having a really aggressive position as the returner's partner. We talked about return strategy, and then he had some really great advice for coaches. If you're a coach or even if you're a player, I think you're going to get a lot out of this, and I think you should take this advice to heart. I heard it first mentioned by Calvin on the podcast Control the Controllables with Dan Kiernan a few weeks ago. So I wanted him to elaborate on this point because I think it's so important for coaches to hear. And then in the second half of the podcast, of course, we talked about the recent ATP doubles news. I asked Calvin when he found out what his reaction was, what was the experience like on the grounds at Wimbledon. And then we talk about Henry's speech after winning Wimbledon, which I thought he did a great job of. And then I asked Calvin if he thinks this is actually a business decision from the ATP. I personally don't believe it is a business decision. I think that's a bit of a distraction, but we dive into that pretty deep as well. So I appreciate Calvin coming on. He's always very honest with his opinions and not afraid to share. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this, whether you're here for the first half, listening to the Wimbledon run and the strategy, or the second half with the reaction and the news from the ATP Tour cutting doubles in 2028. So without further delay, enjoy this conversation with Calvin Betton. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today we have Calvin Betton on. Calvin, welcome back.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Thanks for coming back on. Congrats on another Wimbledon title with Harri Patten. I wanted to start with the 2024 title. How was this one different in 2026?
It was quite a bit different in that this time, when we went into it last time, look, Henry and Harri had only been playing together for, I think, 2 or 3 months. Harri had just had the serious shoulder injury. They didn't even know whether he was going to be able to get through matches. They weren't seeded. We knocked out Bilal Babasori. I think it was the 4th seeds in the first round, and things just kept going. It was like a disbelief. Like, I can't believe we keep winning these matches. You know, they'd only actually played one slam before that. That was the French, and they had to retire from that because Harri got injured. So, we'd only going into that, we'd only won 2 slam matches together. And it was just kind of disbelief that what was happening. Whereas, coming into this one, they've obviously proven themselves to be the number 1 pair in the world. They were the top seeds coming in, and it was kind of a bit more of a, we'd be pretty disappointed if we don't make at least semis, and then we're definitely coming in with the intention of winning. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, I want to talk about all the tiebreakers. Y'all went 8-1 in tiebreakers during this Wimbledon run. What did they do so well in tiebreakers to get that 8-1 record? And is there anything different, like either strategy-wise or mental, from a mentality perspective, that they try to bring into a tiebreaker versus the rest of the match?
I mean, I was saying to somebody the other day, it always cracks me up with this because you get some coaches, and I've heard it myself, they've told me, oh, yeah, we have a system for tie breaks. We
Yeah.
have a system. And then I'm like, all right, what's the system? And they go, oh, the system is say to ourselves, we're going to raise our game a bit. And I'm like, that's not a system. Like, and it's also like, why would you not raise it before the tie break?
Yeah.
Like, why are you just raising it? If you've got another level to go to, why don't you do it at 5-all in games? Like what?
And avoid the tiebreaker altogether.
Yeah. So I'm not going to sit here and try and blag my way through it and say we have a system for winning tiebreaks. They're just one thing we have done, and this is not in tiebreaks in particular. This is overall since we said from last year's US Open that I think Henry and Harri have really improved. And one thing I was kind of like quite insistent on myself is it's just not giving easy points away. Like we felt kind of around the American Summer last year, we kind of like, we got into a habit of like, we just giving opponents like 30 love in their service games without really having to serve that well. They'd sort of roll a couple of average serves in, we'd miss a couple of returns, and we're sort of 30 love down, and we're just never putting pressure on to break. So one of the things that we sort of really try to knuckle down in is like every point is like that opponents don't get anything. They have to work for everything. And I think that's kind of transpired in their games, but also in tie breaks as well. And I think the main thing, Will, is both guys serve great and both guys return great. And, that you're going to have to come up against a lot of work if you're going to, because both of them, there's no like easy points,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to ask about returns. With returns, I find like some players have maybe it's a game style thing, or maybe they choose the strategy of they're going to unload on returns and try to rip return winners or force serve +1 errors. They miss a lot of returns, but eventually in a game, they will land 2 of them and they get the break, right? 2 or 3 of them, they get the break. Or I'm going to make a lot of returns in play and you're not going to have any easy service holds. And I'm going to let you make the mistake. How do you balance that? Is that player specific, matchup specific, or surface specific? How do you think about that?
I think it's definitely player specific. It may be sort of matchup specific a lot of the time. If we're playing a guy who we don't think is great on ball 3 and that kind of thing, you'd say, look, let's make a lot more this time and put pressure on. Like, for example, if you're playing singles guys, you're going to go, because we think that the longer the rally goes, then it gives us a bigger chance that we can sort of pressure with our positioning and return as partner and that kind of thing. So a lot of the time we'll say that, and then against doubles guys, you might try and do a little bit more damage. But I think a lot of it is kind of player specific. Like you definitely do get guys who are like they're just going to make a lot of balls. Like one who always stands out for me, a classic example of that is Mektic. Like with Mekta that if it's a 30, you like say if he's playing on the ad and it's break point, it's a juice point, you miss your first serve, he's going to make you play that ball on the second serve. He's probably not going to smoke a winner, but he's going to make you work for that hold at that point. Whereas you're going to play other guys, probably kind of like what Henry is, who can just take the game away from you. As you saw, like in the semi, like his last 2 returns, they're 2 great first serves, and you can't account for that. Kovacevic and Kokkinakis, they've hit 2 great serves at key moments, and he's just hit a clean winner off both of them. Like, how can you account for that? And it's I think it's like different types of player, and then Henry will naturally go through a lot of points where he doesn't return as well as he did, and I kept saying to him during the semi, like when I know he was getting frustrated with his return, and I kept just saying you only need a couple, that's all you need, you just need a couple, and I didn't think they'd be the last two returns of the match. I was more thinking get a couple in a game and see what we could do, but yeah, it's one of those things that yeah.
Yeah. But so the semifinals match 7-6, 7-6, and then final 7-6, 7-6. That final match, y'all played Pavic and Arevalo, who you had faced in Queens a couple weeks earlier and lost. How much weight goes into reviewing that match versus kind of focusing on yourselves in the final? How did that prep, or what did that prep look like?
It's a bit of a point of conjecture that because we didn't actually review the match in Queens, and we
Okay.
do always review, but like as it happened, it was like it was London, and I was actually going to Luke and Jan were playing in Eastbourne the next day, and Henry and Henry had quite a lot of family there. So I'd kind of said, look, I'm going to Eastbourne. I need to be leaving there by like 8 o'clock. I think my train was, or like 7:30, and and the lads came off the court, and there was some like champagne in there, and for winners and food, and the lads basically tucked into the champagne and beers as soon as they came off court. And by the time like I was just hanging around waiting, ready to review, and they'd had a couple of beers by that point, and they were there with their family. So we kind of said, look, let's review it later. But we ended up just not reviewing it at all, and then beat them next time we played them. So
So even before the Wimbledon final, you didn't like look back at the film of that match to
we looked back. I mean, I watched the whole match numerous times before the
yeah.
final. I'm talking about like straight after the match. We didn't review it, but no,
Oh, I
I
see.
watched it. And it's not just that match. We've played them, I think, 5 times in the last 8 months.
Hmm.
So we knew them. That was the only match that they'd won actually, and they played very well. But it was one of those though. Again, it's a strange gig is doubles because I know that they played very well that day. Pavic in particular played excellent, but the actual breaks we gave them. They didn't really have to do much for the breaks. They returned their best stuff on the games that we actually held, but the games they broke, we kind of played bad games. And I know on that day Henry wasn't happy with his returning at that Queen's final, so I looked for a couple of things that he might want to look to do a bit better on their serves, and I looked at myself, and then the night before I showed him a couple of videos, and we kind of just discussed it together and came up with some ideas of what he was going to do, and they actually were quite successful on the day. Those things.
How do you talked about not giving away free points, being something they're better at maybe today than they were last summer, especially on the hard court swing. Is that like a mentality thing? How do you convince yourself that every single point is so important? And how do you convince yourself not to give away those free points and avoid
I
those kind
think
of
it's I think
mental
it's
lapses?
I think it's kind of a case of like finding the right level of focus. I always say like an example I've used before is you want to have like a rolling boil, like if you imagine a pan of water, you don't want it to be not boiling, you don't want to be too switched off, and you don't want it to be feverishly boiling over. You want a nice sort of simmering, rolling boil of concentration. And I think that that's where you get it. You don't want to be overly hyped and be going for too much. And I felt like we weren't valuing the points early in games last year. And that's something that even though we didn't break serve we didn't break serve in the semi or the final. I think we broke serve once in the semi final and quarter final. And I think that it's still though like we still made the opponents work for their service games,
Mm.
as opposed to what was happening a lot last summer, I think. And then when it came to the tie breaks, the pressure of them having to work for their service games kind of told a bit.
Um, so I want to ask about, I saw some photos from the Wimbledon dinner. Talk about that experience. What is that like, and how does it, I don't know, how
Uh,
take us through it.
it's not great. To be honest, it's a strange event. We said we
Okay.
weren't actually going to go, but then Henry like felt like he should go because of like he made his speech after the match with regards to the double situation, and he felt like it would be appropriate for him to actually go. So then we decided to go. It's a very strange setup. I mean, it doesn't start until really late. Like so it starts, I think you've got to be there for 9 p.m. It's on a Sunday night. You've got to be there from 9 p.m. for the plan is for the event to start at 10 p.m. But
Hmm.
then they don't start the singles final until 4 p.m. And then that goes 4 sets. So basically, like the first course of the dinner was served at 11:35 p.m.
Oh,
and
wow.
the dessert was served at 1:15 a.m. And then in the middle of that, they've got some speeches, but then they announce that you have a dessert there, and they announce that the transport away from the venue ends at 2 a.m. So, and then you've probably got like 300 people in there as well.
Oh, wow.
So, it's a strange setup. Like nobody really knows who it's for either. Like there's very few tennis players there. Like
Oh, interesting.
there's probably like 15 tennis players maybe who are there, and then some coaches, and the rest of it is just club members. And then the speeches, they kind of want to talk about stuff that's going on at the club, like various charities that they run, which is great. It's a really nice vocation, but if I'm perfectly honest, I don't want to hear about it at 15 minutes past midnight on a Sunday. And it's a strange setup, but
Interesting. It sounds like it's probably for the members then, for them to
I think
like,
it kind of is. Yeah, it kind
I
of
don't
is.
know, be a part of the Wimbledon experience or whatever. All right, a couple of other strategy and kind of coaching questions. I remember, so this is a question from the 2024 final. Y'all won that one 6-7, 7-6, 7-6, I believe. And I remember watching that match, and this might be like a Louis Kaye thing, but I remember watching that match and I was thinking that on return, there were no breaks of serves across the three sets. And I remember thinking on return, both teams had opposite problems. The Purcell and Thompson were playing a lot of two back on return, and they'd rip a good return. Let's say Henry's serving, they'd rip a good return, and nobody's at the net, so they'd allow Henry to just like float a ball high through the middle and just reset right off a good return. And then I felt like Henry and Harry, returner's partner, was so far inside the service box that any serve plus one volley from the server's partner, it was just such an easy target, and they would just hit it right at him, and then the point's over. And there was no breaks of serves in the match. I've noticed this with a lot of the British teams, like the returner's partner stands really close. Talk about either that match specifically or why that is, or how you think about that returner's partner position.
I mean, I think also in that match, you got to remember, I guess similar to this one, like you also had four excellent servers on the court
Sure.
who were all
Yeah, yeah.
serving very well. I can't remember, but I think in that match against Purcell Thompson, I think everybody was over 70% first serve as well,
Okay.
which is, or he was definitely up and around there.
Yeah.
Purcell Thompson, I know, Purcell tends to, him personally, has a big thing about always having two back. Like his thing is
Hmm.
like, you don't give a target, but and teams that people have asked me about that. I'm not opposed. It's never my first point of call to go two back. I'm not opposed to reverting back there if I see something in the match. But my way of thinking is I want to be ready because in doubles you don't get many good returns, and I want to be ready for the good ones. The likelihood
Hmm.
is, to be honest, that like if the return isn't that great and it comes to service partner, they're probably finishing the ball anyway. So I want to be there ready if we make the good returns. Um,
Hmm.
and Henry and Harry in particular are both excellent returners partners, and that would, if we went two back, it would take a big thing away from that. And it's basically like I don't think we necessarily start any further forwards than anyone else. We start in we have a set position where we do start, but we tend to put it's one of the things that we do. We like to pressure as returners partner, and we're ready for the good returns. It certainly is
Hmm.
something that we work on.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I was thinking more like rather than inside. the service, like well inside the service line, maybe like at the service line, just to give yourself that extra 2 or 3 feet of
it's because
space to defend?
that's no, because that's going to be like you're in the worst of both worlds. There, you're probably not defending like the split second that it comes at. If someone stood on the service line, and some do, it's still way too easy to just finishing that off, and you're too far back to actually take advantage of the good returns. So it's not something that the service line for me is a terrible position to start for a service partner.
Interesting.
It's
Okay.
it's like I think you've got to commit to one or the other. Like it's weird. Like I saw Kokonakis was standing kind of like 2 steps inside the baseline, and I
Yeah.
was like, that's just like a nothing position. Like what
Yeah.
kind of what is that? You're not getting anything there.
Yeah. I feel like I see it more on the women's tour. I think ATP's, yeah, certainly different. Like the server's partner is a lot better on ATP and obviously the serve relative to the
Yeah,
return
yeah, yeah,
too. So,
yeah.
um, another question, this time about coaching. So I heard you chat with Dan on Control the Controllables during one of the Wimbledon Live podcasts. And one of the things you said that stood out to me, um, you'll have to rephrase this because I don't remember the exact words, but you said something like it would be arrogant of me to think I'm smarter at strategy than Henry and Harry. And you talked about your role as a coach. So elaborate on that a little bit because I think this is really good advice for coaches because a lot of coaches think that they always know more than their players.
Yeah, and I think that's a perception also that other people have. Like I know my dad always has this constant argument with my dad. My dad's like, whenever like I remember whenever Federer like hired a coach, my dad would be like, "Why is he hiring him? Like, what can he tell Federer about tennis? Like, he's way better than him at tennis." And but
Yeah,
that's kind of not what a coach is. At this level, it's we really are there as like kind of a sounding board and also as an extra pair of eyes and to be able to analyze what's going on the court that they can. Equally, they can see things on the court that we can't just because of they're involved in it and they're like the angle that they're at. I mean, especially if coaching, but if I'm on the side of the court, I don't, the whole geometry's off. I can't really see what's going on in terms of positions or what have you. So, but I can see stuff from the side. So, whereas they're seeing it from a first person point of view, I'm seeing it from kind of a third person point of view. I can see. So it's mainly just it's not me telling them. I'd never go like do this, do this, or unless I'm absolutely certain of anything. But what I can tell them is some things that I've noticed that they may not have noticed within the course of the match. And same like whether that be technically or tactically or that kind of thing. But like I say, I would never imagine that I would never be like you say, I'd never be so arrogant to think like I've seen something that like I know what's happening here and they haven't figured that out.
hmm yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it probably builds a lot more trust between you and the players too, right?
Yeah, and also that they haven't got that they haven't got there by not being able to manage a tennis match, and that goes for all my players. It goes for Luke and Jan as well. It's
Yeah,
like they're exceptional tennis players, and part of that is having exceptional strategy and that kind of thing. But there are certain situations that like I say, in the heat of the moment, they may not have noticed. And
sure.
I think it was like one of the matches, I forget what the match was, but they hadn't served to Harry's backhand at all in the whole match, and he was still covering like both, like as if it could go one way or the other. I think it's maybe the second round match, and they basically like, or maybe like once they'd served like once to Harry's backhand in like at that stage like 2 hours of tennis. And Boris
hmm
and I, who's Harry's coach, were like, well, then we were like, look, you might want to consider this. They've only done that, but he didn't notice that at the time. He's in the heat of the moment. And bear in mind at doubles you're only returning once every other point. So and especially if the service games are flying through on the ad side, you're only getting 2 points per game sometimes. So
Yeah.
so it wasn't something that in the heat of the moment he hadn't registered. Actually, yeah, they've only served like once there, but whole match. But so it's more stuff like that rather than like us thinking like we can tell them stuff that they wouldn't possibly be smart enough to know.
Yeah. So I want to move on to the doubles news. To start, Henry's speech at the end of the match or after the match on the court. Is that something that he had planned out, or did he do that kind of off the cuff, um, just off the top of his head? I thought it was really well said and very kind of, I don't know, it didn't sound bitter at all, which I'm certain
Yeah,
it could have if it had been said the wrong way.
I think no. I listen. I don't think for a second he had it planned out word for word. I
Hmm.
don't think he, knowing Henry as I do, I don't even think he'd have thought about it because in order to think about it, he'd probably have to think about winning the match. And I don't think he'd be so arrogant to think we're definitely going to win the match. But I think
Sure.
then probably when he won, he probably thought, this is an opportunity that I really have to take advantage of because it's a big stage and as always, he speaks so well and he's so smart that he can articulate those things exceptionally well. And like you say, I think it was almost perfect how he did it in that I think he kind of went on the offense, but without offending anybody. He said only factual information. Everything he said was facts, and I think what was right was that he said we're constantly talking about growing the game, and here we are trying to reduce opportunities in the game.
When did you find out the news, and what was your reaction? And talk about the kind of experience on the grounds.
We found out about it, I think, probably maybe the day before the tournament started. I can't be certain of that, but it's either, maybe the Sunday before the tournament started. They basically, said this is what's going to be happening. I think they put a release out, and then the doubles players all met and had a discussion about the best way in how they were going to sort of deal with it from that point. But it was quite. There'd been rumours, but it was quite a shock that the severity of it all, I would say.
Do you think that this is a business decision?
No, not in. Well, for starters, I think there's two ways to answer that. Will I think that we should always remember, and I've said this on Twitter, that this is a sport. It's not business. It's sport. And if we approach, it's quite a soulless way to look at it. If we approach everything to do with sport as a business decision, no sport at the high level makes complete sense from a business point of view. It's a trickle down situation. Like if you look at, I guess in America, like you look at Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball finances the A leagues. Like there are
Hmm.
no A leagues without Major League Baseball. And if we're perfectly honest, like in Premier League football, the Premier League finances the whole of British football. And to be honest, probably the top six teams in the Premier League finance the whole of the Premier League. But we don't go, we need to get rid of all these because these are not bringing in any money, because we look at it from a point of view of this is the sport that we're dealing with. We have to maintain this sport. So I think there's that element of it that we shouldn't always look at everything through the prism of a business. It's not a business, it is a sport. Of course, every element of the sport wants to make money, but you want to make money to reinvest into the sport. It's not a business, is something that's trying to make a profit. Now, tournaments can try and make a profit, which they do. Players can try and make a profit, but the sport, the governing body, the ATP, is not a business. It is a governing body. It's the Association of Tennis Professionals, and that should never be forgotten. It is a governing body, not a business. Um, the second part of my answer on that is I don't think even from that point of view, it's ridiculous to say this is a business decision, because any business, if you take doubles as a product, you market a product, you promote a product, you try and get the best from the product. And I'd find it difficult for anybody from the ATP to come in here and tell us that they've actually tried to market, promote, and get the best out of this product. Some of the things the figures that come out are shameful.
Yeah, I saw somebody, it was some publication in Australia. This guy went through like the last 1,000 posts on Instagram and
Yeah,
Twitter. Did you see this from
I saw it. Yeah,
ATP and then also
terrible.
from the I think from some of the majors as well? I think the highest percentage of posts being related to doubles was like 3.6%. A lot of them, I think all of them from the ATP were under like 1.5% of
I
all
think
their
most of them
content.
were under 1%. I think the most prominent one was 0.6% of posts
Okay.
on. I
Yeah,
think
I'll link to
posts on
that.
tennis. posts on Tennis TV, I think, was 0.6% on doubles.
Yeah, I'll link to that in the show notes. And I've talked enough about like my ideas for marketing and why or the fact that the ATP doesn't market. It's clearly something they need to do.
I think it's like, I mean, I grew up, my dad was a car salesman and he had a car showroom. And I think it's kind of like, if I put it through that kind of analogy, it would be basically like my dad's got a load of cars in the showroom. And then there's 3 or 4 cars in the back that never see the showroom. They're out back in the yard. And so the customers never see them. They never see them and we never get them out. But they're good cars, but we just never get them out. And then we go, oh, send those to the scrap heap because nobody's buying them. Like, how would anybody buy them? They're back in the yard. Like, they're never in the showroom. So, but you wouldn't do that. Nobody in business would do that. They'd go, look, we need to try and get some money out of these cars. Let's put them in the showroom. But we're not doing that. And not only that, we're doing the opposite of it. It really feels like it's kind of actively pursuing to not promote it. I'll give you, a couple of examples. So, semi-finals day, Thursday of men's doubles. Thursday of men's doubles, there was Thursday of Wimbledon, second Thursday. There were no men's singles matches that day. None at all. There was only 2 men's doubles matches. So there's no new singles to show on that day. Tennis TV, I went on it to have a look. So 2 great doubles matches were played that day. They had 0 posts about any of the doubles. What they did have was they had a feature of best tennis matches of 2006, best tennis matches of 2011, and they had a clip of Nick Kyrgios talking about playing FIFA when the World Cup was on. Now, I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's comical. I mean, that's insane.
Men's finals, the final of the doubles, no posts.
Yeah.
And, the thing what frustrates me about that is it doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't cost them a single thing to just put on there. Just put a post on there. Few points from the final. What's it going to cost? They've got no tennis to show that. They've got no content. They have to find content. They've got people there trying to find content. So to me, that seems like it's somebody going, do not put this on, rather than, because even if you're working in social media, you think this is easy content. We can clip up some points, some great points here. Let's clip it on and put, it's just easy for us. But it makes me think that there's somebody saying, don't do that.
Yeah, I don't know much about Tennis TV. I see their lack of doubles posts on social media, but I don't know much about like who runs it or
well, it's run by
it's
the official, it's the media outlet of the ATP, so it's interlinked with the ATP. It's not independent of it. It's but I mean, we have been told previously that they've been told not to put doubles on. But what I find interesting about that, and again, I think I knew this anyway, but I think it was in that article that you just referenced, that when they occasionally do put some doubles on, and what really annoys me is like when the singles guys play doubles, they put doubles on. So when you're saying that there's like 1.5%, I'd love to know what percentage of that 1.5% is singles guys playing doubles.
Yeah, it's got to be most.
Oh, I think it would be 90% of those, I think.
Yeah.
But when they do occasionally put some players doubles on, the numbers that they get are the same as the numbers that they get for the singles posts. It's almost no different. Yeah. So that's where I find something that makes me think there's something underhand going on here, because the numbers that then they keep talking about, like, the numbers the numbers are not great for doubles and that kind of thing. Right. So let's look at when you do post on social. Never post on social.
Who's saying that though? Because this is what I'm curious about. I know some journalists are saying it, but are people from the ATP actually saying this? Like that
I think
doubles
it's been thrown about there. Yeah, I think it's been thrown about there.
Okay.
I've not been in the meetings, but I think it's been said in the meetings. But I can't be certain of that. But but even the journalists that say, which again, I don't really get why they're so keen to get rid of this, because I'll come back to that in a minute, but I'll go back to my original point of like when they say like the numbers don't add up, like where do they not add up? Because when they do post, the likes and the views are the same as the singles posts. There's no disparity in it; they're the same. So, right, it's not there. When you go to the tournaments, if any of your listeners want to go on my Twitter or my X account, there's a whole thread that I've just whole thread of videos and pictures where I put nobody wants to watch doubles, sarcastically, because that's what the ATP keeps saying. Nobody wants to watch doubles.
Yeah, I
Just
stole
have a
that
look
idea
through
and
that.
put it on Instagram.
Yeah, I think there's probably 15 videos I've taken in the last year of when I've been at tournaments and when I've been at events. And I don't take videos of every match that I'm at because it's my job and I can't be taking videos all the time and pictures. But the stadiums around the world are packed with this kind of thing. So where I want to know from the ATP, where particularly, what specific tournaments does no one want to watch doubles? And that's where I find quite off-putting. And then when we talk, and when they say again, the numbers don't add up, the ATP have not produced any numbers. You know, I know that the players have asked, right, okay, can you show us those numbers so we can get an idea of this? They haven't produced any yet. But what I do know is it's going to be almost impossible to quantify. And again, I see people like John Wertheim keep saying they're paying 20% of prize money, but they're not bringing in 20% of income. Like that, that's just not a way. That's such a reductive way to look at this. Like it's such a bizarre way to look at it. Like, so, okay, if we're doing that, then let's make the only way we can, if we're going to do it that way, then every single player who's playing tennis should only be paid the prize money that they're pulling in. And I don't think anyone's going to get paid a whole lot other than 2 or 3 players, if that's the case. Like, right. 'Cause I don't want to be the guy who's like, and I'm only going to pull this out of, you know, thin air, but I don't want to be Alex de Minaur, because Alex de Minaur's prize money is going to go down a whole lot if you're only paying players the amount that they pull in ticket sales.
Right.
You know, so at Grand Slams and that kind of thing. So but what I will say, and it's the same for any player and anything to do with tennis, other than center court, there's no way of quantifying the amounts that doubles can bring in. Because let's take for any tournament, how are you quantifying how much revenue doubles pulls in? Because there's only, once you get past kind of the first 2 or 3 days of a tournament, of a tour level tournament, there's only doubles on the outside court. So everybody that's buying grounds passes, they're paying anywhere from around the world. They're paying anywhere from between about $50 to about $300 for grounds passes. While they're in the grounds, there's only doubles to watch in the grounds. They're going to buy probably a T-shirt. They're going to buy a cap each. They might buy a little bit more merchandise. They're probably going to get a couple of beers. They're probably going to get they're going to get a burger and some hot dogs and some fries.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything on those outside courts, how are you selling grounds passes? And if you're not selling grounds passes, how are you selling all that stuff? And how are you going to actually quantify? Because I'm not saying everybody who gets a grounds pass is there thinking we're going to watch specifically doubles players. But what they are doing is they're going, we're going to watch some tennis. We're going to watch some tennis. And I don't overly care who's in it. But there simply are not enough singles matches to fill the week.
Yeah, one of the sense I get, because I posted some photos of Court 1 that day during the semifinals and said, you know, here's nobody watching doubles, and Court 1 was packed.
You know the thing about Court 1 that day, though, what I didn't realize? Court 1, so it's only doubles on that court. There's 2 doubles matches. I think there was a wheelchair match after that. The tickets for that was entirely ticketed. You couldn't get in with a grounds pass. They were £110 a day, £110 a ticket. So, and it was, I'm going to say it was at least 90% full. And I think it's 9,000 seats, Court 1.
It's 12 something. I looked it
12,
up.
okay.
So that's 1 point. Million. If they had 10,000 people, it's 1.2 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now they know in advance. Those people know in advance when they buy the ticket there is only going to be 2 doubles matches on.
Watching doubles, yeah.
So
but the rebuttal, I guess, I got from people on Twitter and Instagram when I posted that photo is, but they're there to be at Wimbledon. They're not there to watch doubles, so I guess it doesn't count. But I kind of think that they're kind of proving my point, right? Like, that should be the goal of every tennis tournament, right? You're buying a ticket to our tournament. You're not buying a singles ticket. You're not buying a doubles ticket. You're buying a ticket to be at Indian Wells. You're buying a ticket to be at US Open. You're buying a ticket to be at our tennis event. we have singles, we have doubles, we have food, we have drinks, we have TVs outside where you can hang out and watch from there.
Well,
Like,
if they want to, I 100% take your point. 100%, you're correct. They just want it to be at Wimbledon. They get grounds pass for 40 quid.
that's
There's loads of
true.
people to do it.
Yeah.
They get grounds pass for
Yeah.
£40. You go
Yeah.
outside the outside course, some juniors on, some junior events on. You can go get your strawberries and that kind of thing. 40, I think it's £37. I think for a grounds
Yeah.
pass. So you go
Yeah.
and do that. But it's like you say, people are going to watch tennis, and while they're watching tennis, they're buying shit. It's secondary sell. This is what I don't get when we're talking about this business thing. This doesn't make sense on any level from a business point of view, because you think we can keep this stuff for a relatively minuscule amount that we pay back in prize money and the other stuff. I've seen people talking about, it's the other costs, the expenses, like, again, things that
Yeah.
have been thrown around there, like, the physios that they need. The physios are salaried by the ATP. They're there anyway. Singles players get priority on physios. Like the doubles players only use the physios if the singles players don't need them. Right, so they're there.
Yeah.
They're going to be there anyway. They work a standard shift. They're going to be there anyway. So doubles players are not. You're not hiring physios to work for doubles players. There's some hotel rooms, but again, for the cost of those hotel rooms is minuscule compared to what this is. What the amount of money that these tournaments are making from
Yeah.
having them there.
Well, it
And
seems like
again, I'll say the last thing as well, Will, about this business thing, right? If you go, each of these tournaments, most of these tournaments have like pro-ams in the early stages, or just before the tournament starts. And it's basically where the sponsors who throw a lot of money at these tournaments in sponsorship, they want to come and they want to hit some balls. Now, let me tell you something. I've been around them. Those singles guys are not turning up to those pro-ams. If you go to the pro-ams, 95% of the guys who are there are doubles players who are spending their
Mhm.
time on a Tuesday morning in Dallas playing a pro-am with two guys who chucked a load of money at the tournament.
Yeah.
When they have kids days, when they have media days, it's not the singles guys who are going, it's the doubles guys who are going to go and earn that money. So again, that's making money for the tournament. How do you quantify that? Because when those rich guys from Dallas want to throw money at the Dallas Open, they're not just doing it for the goodness of their heart. They probably want a bit of pro-am action as well. Try getting the singles guys to go out there and do some pro-am at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah. So I think like this idea that it is a business decision that, Wertheim has mentioned and other journalists and people on Twitter, it seems like it's a, like to put it nicely, a distraction, and then to put it harshly, a lie. Um,
Yeah,
it seems
I
like
don't
it's
think
it's
I
just
don't think
not.
John's I don't think John Wertheim is lying. I think he actually
No, no, no,
believes
no.
that. But
I mean a
what I
lie
have
from the ATP
what
is what
I
I
have a
mean.
problem with, yeah, no, I agree. From the ATP, I think it's kind of a stitch up. I think they're attempting a transfer of wealth, and I think that's the worst part, because I think it's kind of bullshit in the fans and bullshitting the fans in their messaging, but also at tournaments. They're basically going, we still think you'll come and pay the same amount, even though we're going to be offering a lot less tennis.
Hmm.
And that this is not to, by the way, this is not for the tournaments. When we're talking about business model, this is not for the tournaments to make any more money. That money's still going to, the tournaments won't keep that. That money's just going to go to the singles guys who are already making a fortune.
Yeah.
I think there's guys out there there's guys out there who've won 6 tennis matches this year and they've made over $500,000 singles players.
Hmm.
And we're sitting here going, they need more money. So how can it be a business decision, Will, if at the end of the day there's no more money actually comes in? It's just
Yeah.
gonna be it's just gonna be transferred somewhere else.
It seems like it's not a business decision. I think that's kind of my point. I think that's a distraction or a lie, and it's really like an ego thing from some of the people making the decisions on. We've talked about like older players who aren't make or who didn't make as much money in their career as some of the doubles players do today, or like singles players today, some of them, not all of them, but some of them don't respect the doubles specialists because they never reached top 100 in singles, right? So they only value singles players as good tennis players.
Well,
So,
again though, like I saw the French guy making the ridiculous comment that like doubles guys are only like
mhm,
2-6 or 4-6. I don't even know what that level is anymore. But I had a look. I think by my count, I look at the rankings yesterday. I think 24 of the top 100 doubles players currently have been top 100 singles players.
mhm,
So are we counting those players who are
yeah,
only at that level? Like, 'cause I know, like, for example, I know Andrea Vavasori has this year he's qualified and won rounds in singles tour events. Oh,
yeah,
is he an average club player? Is
yeah,
Simone Bolelli an average club player? Because he's like, I'm pretty sure he's been 23 in the world in singles.
yeah,
What about Adam Pavlicek? Been 70 in the world singles. Guido Andriozzi, I think 60 in the world singles. Are we counting these players? So are we not? All right. So we're not counting those players. So what about the players who are ranked higher than them? What about Henry and Harri? Are we saying that they're not very good, even though they're ranked higher than those guys who have been top 100 singles? Like, what's it doesn't add up all this.
yeah. I mean, I think that it's just a lack of respect for the fact that it's just a different variation of the same sport, right?
Listen, right?
Like if you're
Is
better at singles, that doesn't make you a better person or better whatever than
in
somebody who's awesome at doubles. Like
no,
doubles is certainly less endurance, more skill and tactics and strategy, right? But that doesn't make it better or worse. It's just different, right?
the thing what listen, people enjoy sport and have done since time immemorial because they like the drama that it consumes you. A great friend of mine, one of my best friends, who's a brilliant journalist, brilliant writer, he said that great sport and misery are the only two things that will fully consume you, and it's true. And you know when you're there in, you know, if you're unlucky enough to have total misery, it fully consumes you. You can't find a way out of it. And the same in sport. I know that Henry and Harry were playing that match. I think it was their quarter-final match, let's say, last week on court 2, and it was packed. By the way, all ticketed as well, doubles only that day. Um, and I don't think anyone in that stadium thought about anything else for the last 30 minutes of that match. It was all just sport. So the product and that kind of thing. When we hear the product's not good, it's sport. People will pay to come and watch sport, and you can't get away from that. People have always done it. We saw it there. It was in evidence last week. Go on my Twitter account, look at that thread. You can see it's in evidence there. But this business thing, it just doesn't add up to me because you're not trying your best to get anything out of it. And you would always try your best to get something out of it. Um,
Right.
but again, listen, the point I want to make on this is when people go, somebody said to me last week, I think it might have been Rothenberg, not said it to me, but I think he saw, well, something has to change. And my response is, why? Why does anything have to change? What if it doesn't? What if everything stays the same? If everything stays the same, right? All the singles guys will make absolute fortunes out of tennis. The doubles guy, the tournaments will make absolute fortunes out of running the tournaments. And some of them that don't, if we want to get into business models, let's talk about those 250s that have to be propped up. Let's talk about the grass 250s that have to be propped up by Wimbledon financing them because they don't make money themselves. Should we get rid of those as well? No, because the sport makes a fortune. The tournaments and the sport make a fortune, and it's there to be reinvested in stuff like that. The Stuttgart Open, the Hertogenbosch Open doesn't make business sense, but absolutely we have to keep it because it's there. It's sport that the sport is making millions, tens and hundreds of millions, needs to reinvest in stuff like that. But as I was saying, if nothing changes, singles players will make an absolute fortune, and so they should. They're they're greatly talented. They provide people with huge amounts of entertainment. They're the stars of the sport. The doubles guys, they know they're the supporting act, and they'll get paid a bit on the side for doing that. Not fortunes. No one's making, unless you're winning everything. I think, listen, I think Julian Cash and Lloyd Glasspool last year, that people would struggle to win more than they won. And I think they made $1.2 million.
Yeah.
I think that, that's the most you can really win in a year, realistically, on tour. Yannick Sinner gets paid $4 million for winning Wimbledon for one tournament.
Yeah.
So if everything stays the same, singles players make a fortune, tournaments make a fortune, fans, they pay to come and see their tennis. They have a great day out. They see loads of tennis. Doubles players, they make a bit of money on the side. Who's not happy?
Yeah.
Who's not happy apart from, it's the one thing that comes into it. It's greed that comes into it. Because somebody thinks, I can make more money there if I can have his share. And that's the concerning thing. But the idea that, it can't stay the same. Yes, it can. 100% can stay the same. Because it's the model that it's always been run with in tennis. And you know what? It works.
Last question for you. What do you think is going to happen? How likely is this to come to fruition?
I don't know. I don't really want to speculate because I don't. I think there's going to be. I know the doubles guys are going to fight it. I don't really know the way. I don't know. I know that they're probably speaking to some. I don't know if they're getting legal advice or not, but it's. I think it's probably going to. It might have to go that way. There may be an argument for restriction of trade or something like that. I think it. I really hope that there's some sense that comes into it. That there is some really smart business minds in tennis. Craig Tiley, in particular, I think Craig Tiley's he's an elite sporting executive in any sport. I know Craig doesn't think we should get rid of doubles, and I know there's some other really smart business execs involved in tennis. Speak to them, ask them if they think that they should get rid of doubles, and none who I've spoken to think that. But some tournament directors of some tournaments that have gone bust have contrary opinions. So, make of that what you will.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, this was a fun conversation, Calvin. I appreciate you coming on, and we will talk to you again soon.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast. If you're interested in diving deeper into the world of doubles strategy, I've created Tennis Tribe memberships that allow me to bring you more podcast episodes, video lessons, webinars, and other doubles content on a weekly basis without relying on paid ads. The lessons inside the membership will help you better game plan with your partner, optimize your practices, and become the smartest player on the court. Go to thetennistribe.com/memberships to learn more and sign up. You can also join my free newsletter on our homepage, where I share a new doubles lesson every week. If you want to connect, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or contact me through our website. Thanks again for listening.